All right, what's up everybody? I'm here in the green room at the Red Room in Vancouver, BC with Mr. Opiuo himself. This is the last date on his tour that he's been doing with Vibe Squad, and he's been nice enough to catch us up with a little bit of his time to talk shop. Now, anybody who's seen this channel for a little while knows that I've interviewed Opiuo before, and so we're not going to repeat anything. We're going to go into new material.
No words.
We're going to build on the foundation.
You used my name last time. You can't use it this time.
Your real name?
No, Opiuo.
I thought your real name was Opiuo.
It is my real name, actually.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I've changed it to Oscar now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Killer, man.
I like that.
Or Sunmonks.
Or Sunmonks.
You're confusing me every single time.
Or Geppetto or something. Start chewing straw.
Sweet, man. Well, basically, yeah, I just want to... there's some things that we won't talk about because we've already covered those in the last interview, but there's a lot of stuff I'm sure that's changed between then and now. So I'd like to just, build on that foundation. One of the things is I wanted to make sure everybody knew I was going to be doing this interview and had a chance to kind of chip in with some things that they might want to know about you.
Cool.
So it's not just me asking things
that
I might be curious about. So we've got a few like fan questions and stuff like that too that we'll go into.
Cool.
So let's maybe kick off by just doing a little catch up. One of the things, you've got a new EP coming up, the next edition of your Butternut Slap, which, how did you even come up with these names? How do you come up with your track names, man?
Oh man, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah.
It's random. I used to keep,
slurp and giggle.
I used to keep a list.
Yeah.
And it was great because then I would really think about it, but most of the time I'd go back to that list and kind of be like, that's just stupid. I mean, unless it's in the context of what's going on right then, it was just weird. So it's just like spare of the moment, right then, what I'm thinking. The Butternut Slap, excuse me, Butternut Slap was me and my friend Cam were sitting in my studio, and there's a butternut snap, Australian cookie.
Okay, yeah.
I think it is, and I'd never heard of it.
So these are inside Australian jokes, most of them.
Some of them.
Just why I don't understand.
Yeah, like Boganus proteinus and Bogan protein. You don't know what a Bogan is, do you?
No, I have no
exactly.
idea. I expect I'll find out in about a month, though.
Trashy character of Australia and New Zealand.
Okay.
Kind of like very different to, I mean, there's no word for them here really, but yeah.
Gotcha.
I'll send you an email with a few photos of random Bogans I see along the way.
Oh yeah, you can educate me, fill me in? Sick.
Yeah.
So tell us about the new EP. What's different about this one than the previous installments?
This one, I first time in a while that I'd stopped and wrote an EP. I haven't done that for ages. You know, I took 2 months off before this massive tour and wrote, and I mean, I went full all out. I made as much texture and everything as I could. I recorded guitars, melodica, really kind of built sounds from the ground up just because I had time to do it and just because I wanted to try it out. I'm not a massive fan of spending days and days and days making noises, although I should a lot of the time. I'm more hyperactive brain wanting to make stuff. So this one here for me is my favorite because it's even more of a journey. You know, every song is completely different, and some noises are similar through, but the majority of them aren't. You know, and they really feel different. And every single person I've played the EP to has a different favorite, which is cool.
So is this one more organic than the previous ones? Because I know your Sunmonks project is very organic.
Right, yeah, I mean it could be actually, yeah. One of the tracks I have played an earlier version in a Sunmonks set for a few times. But then when I went back, I rehashed it and kind of made the drums slightly bigger. Didn't really change the sound, but just kind of made them a bit bigger so they'd sit alongside the other things.
Gotcha.
It's the last track on a thing called Trout Snout. It's quite dubby. It's got my friend playing melodica on it. And, lots of really cool key changes, and yeah, even my good friend Dave Tipper was like, man, I love that song. He doesn't normally like 4/4 music, and that was a huge, like, wow, cool, man, that's awesome. I didn't really
It's always a compliment when Tipper likes your stuff.
Yeah, totally, and I love his too, but it was more of a, no one who I expect to like a certain song likes that one the most. You know, they've always got their own favorite, I guess, which is cool.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The tour with Vibe Squad, given that this is the last show...
I might stop you before you do that, because I'm doing a deluxe version of the EPs, and I've got a bunch of remixes coming out.
Okay,
so,
fill us in.
Yeah, I mean, so there's, it looked like it'll be December, we're going to do a deluxe version and create an album out of what I've released throughout the year. So there's 3 EPs that create their own album. And this one here, I'm going to do maybe a 10-track thing and adjust, do a couple of different versions of the song that exist, and maybe some different vocal parts. So it depends how I go over the next little while to finish it up. I'm not sure yet. And then I've got a bunch of remixes from people that I love. So that's going to kind of be the digital version of the deluxe Butternut Slap thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which is exciting because I mean I've been asking people that I really like their music, and they're just like, yep, we'll do it. There's no like,
if they do
how
some
much
remixes.
we pay, what's going on? Because I'm mostly like that. If I really like someone's music, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'll do it. Absolutely, and then we'll figure out that money thing later if we need to. But a lot of the time it doesn't even count. If you're actually into the music or you want to do it, then you're in. You know?
Can you fill us in on who some of the remixers are?
Yeah, I mean like Effective Mushroom sent one in, and I've
solid.
Like, yeah, I've like,
nice one.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Because you did a remix for them a
totally.
while ago. Yeah.
And for me, like it's funny because I don't really follow the electronic music scene very often. I hear names, I hear songs that I like, and I follow it in my own way. But I'm not on the internet every day finding new music and doing that side of things. So for me, like having them, they're like, I remember going to one of my first parties in Australia when I moved there, psytrance party basically, with a bunch of other sort of electro and stuff like that, and they were playing and just totally, I'd heard their music for years and was into their more down-tempo stuff, but that set was amazing, like totally blew me away, and I've always remembered that set electronic music-wise, you know, to totally do that full circle and have them doing a remix for me was amazing.
Killer.
Yeah, really cool.
Okay.
There's a bunch of other people. They're the only one who finished the song, so I mean I could tell you all these other people, but maybe until I get the song I shouldn't tell you in case it doesn't happen, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Great. Okay.
It's awesome.
Perfect. You ready to move on to the tour?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd just love to know, like for the fans, like what were some highlights? You know, like a lot of people look at putting, this was a big production, this was a long tour, played a lot of shows, you toured with some extra gear, bass bins, things like that. So yeah, fill me in on some of the top moments.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, the top moment of the whole tour is doing it. I mean, making it through it.
Yeah.
And realizing a dream that you've had and learning from that whole dream. Like that, for me, at the moment where I'm at in my career, I guess, I always look to learn from everything that I do as opposed to get to it and just be like, cool, stoked, and not really feel like I took a step forward or in some weird way. So this tour was one of those huge achievements. I learned so much about how to tour. I learned how to, you know, now by the time I'm near the end of my tour, I really feel like my show is super dialed, you know. But man, I remember one of the shows like San Francisco this week was incredible. It was in a smaller room in the top of a massive club, and it was like 500 people crammed into this room on a Thursday night. Yep. And it was hot and sweaty and crazy and
just the way it should
fun.
be.
Yeah. And I almost prefer it. Like I've played to 10,000 people in a massive tent before, you know, multiple times, but something about those little sets with just the people there that really want to be there. And
yeah.
I love that shit so much. And New York was insane. It was really, really fun.
Where did you play in New York?
I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah. Good show though?
It was great. Yeah, it was really good. And that's the thing, like we've played 30 shows in just over 30 days. I actually can just remember all these times, but sometimes I don't remember which city I was in, you know. And
yeah.
I've walked on stage a couple of times and had to turn back to the tour manager and ask where I was.
Yeah.
You know, and
I could imagine it would be a blur.
Totally, once you know, there's no disrespect to where I am or who the people around me, and like I'm not going to remember them or anything, but it's all that I basically just, your brain's kind of elsewhere some of the time, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably, out of the 30 shows, there'd be probably 5 or 6 of them that are like going to stay with me forever, you know, like they're really, really good. And 20 of them are just like some of the most fun I've had in my life, you know, and then the 30 of them all make it together to be this huge package, and I loved every single one, to be honest. I really did, you know. Excellent. And there was tough times for, like, you know, when you're on tour and you get tired and you're on your 6th show that week, you know, you've really just got to learn how to pull yourself out of that. Oh, I'm tired, you know. It's like, man, you're fucking touring the world and playing your music for people.
Yep.
Pull your head out of your ass and just get into it and do it. You know, you can't complain and do all that shit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, coming up next after this, you mentioned you're headed off to London for a sold-out show. And is this your first time to London? So, what do you have up your sleeve for the show? Any info you can drop on? Well,
it's a continuation of this tour. Like I knew from when I left Australia, I wrote a bunch of music. I rewrote a bunch of songs. So I mean, whoever has been to my shows before will know that certain tracks I flip on their head and chop them up and play them completely differently, or I'll put new bass lines on songs. And I mean, sometimes it can be subtle, sometimes it can be very obvious. So I really worked on rewriting some tracks that have been around for a while. I've started taking it back to my old school stuff more now, and really finding those moments where people fell in love with my music in the first place.
Yep.
And then slotting in the newer stuff, because sometimes, you know, I write a whole bunch of new music and all I want to do is play that new music. And you go and play it and people love it, and you can see on their faces they just want to hear something they know sometimes, and then you drop something they know and the whole place explodes, you know.
Yep.
And so I think people should never forget that
to play the
there's
classics.
a reason that you got to the point you are, because even if every single DJ in the town plays that same song, if you who wrote it play it to the crowd, they're going to love it. You know? And if they like the song, it's
100%.
It's important, yeah.
So live band, where were you at with that?
Where am I at with it? Well, had I been here since, I haven't talked to you since I did that.
Yeah, like, okay.
I was going to do it, I think,
we
last
chatted
time.
with each other on camera last when
Right.
you were here with Russ Liquid. So he was doing live trumpet,
That was
live
our
sax,
first big run
and
together.
keys.
That's right.
And then you came a second time, and you weren't touring with any other musicians that time, I don't
Right.
think, right? So now we're at round 3. And I know
Right.
you've been progressing more towards it. You've had the idea in your head about
Yeah, it's something I want to do more and more, and it's just making it feasible and realistic. And there's certain people I'm discovering I want to tour with more and more. Russ is someone who's always going to be there, because I love him to bits. But I mean, finding the good, you know, the right drummer, the right sound guy, the right production, you know, the right monitor guy. I mean,
it's a huge production to have.
it's
that
even if
number.
it's 6 people on stage or 3 people on stage. For me, I want to make sure that everyone is so confident in what they're doing and dialed it, and there isn't that thing of like, I mean, I kind of play the role as the band leader in some way, because there are certain things that I'm doing that determine what happens with that breakdown or whatever. But I want to have people around me that are just like, I look at them and it's just like the eye contact and bang, we're in. You know, me and Russ have that sort of thing, and we can look at each other and pick off each other's sort of timing. So I have really started to build, you know, the people around me, and I'm doing a tour. It looks like it's going to be maybe a third of the way into next year through Australia and New Zealand with the band. No dates locked or anything yet. We're just still really working out how to do it properly.
In Australia first, kind of.
Australia, and I think a few shows in New Zealand too.
Sweet.
Which I'm really excited about doing, because that's where I'm from. And
Yep.
I mean, I played a show, I always forget which city it was. It was on the last Australian tour. It might have been Brisbane. And there was one moment right near the end where I just like looked up and everyone was there paying attention and watching us all put this stuff together all at once. It was like almost my career highlight, you know, to feel like there's this many people there to see me play, and I had some of my best friends on stage, you know, playing my music and putting it together with real real instruments, and it was amazing. So to get back to that feeling and that thing, it's totally different from playing by myself. It's another high, but there's something about really getting that music thing back in there. So I'm 100% into doing it. So I will bring it over here one day. I've just got to figure out when that is and how to do it, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, but pilot testing it this coming
Yeah,
year
because
into
half of it's
Australia.
testing, half of it's nailing it. You know, once you come and do it, I mean, after learning about how crazy touring in America is, you know, like that run was just insane. I mean, you can be 100% planned with absolutely everything, and then everything can flip on its head in a second, you know, like.
Gotcha.
We had some crazy shit go down, awesome and just crazy, you know, like I don't regret or want to take anything back. Just it was an amazing, insane tour.
Yeah.
The more shit happened on that tour than I think I've nearly had my entire touring history before that. And it was like, that's what it was, you know.
Well, it's an intense tour. I mean, back-to-back 30 shows
It was crazy.
in all these different cities. And you guys were in a bus for most of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys were touring around in a bus because you had lots of gear and yeah.
It's awesome.
And you and Vibe Squad are still friends.
We're
Amazing.
still friends. I mean,
that says
I don't
something.
think we've even had, I don't even know if we had an argument once. I mean, we probably had like, no man, well, okay, fuck, all right, we'll do that then. Or, you know, one of us would pipe up. But I don't think we ever really had I mean, we're such good friends.
It's been a solid romance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
happy to hear.
Totally. And you get to the point where you just want to sit by yourself, and then you sit by yourself and you're like, I wonder what they're up to. I want to go hang out.
Sweet.
It's funny. It's good. I mean, our crew was sick. It was awesome. So, yeah.
Good to hear.
It's good fun.
Well, let's move into some questions from some of the folks on Facebook. I've got a question here from a guy named Ben Adams, and he's kind of curious about what your opinion of the UK glitch scene is, and if you have any favorite artists there.
What my opinion of the UK glitch scene? You know what? I don't know too much about it. Excuse me. I don't know too much about it because I often will be like, hear something and imagine that they're from there or something, and then I'll find out they're from Australia or America or wherever. So for me, the way I look at, I guess, the glitchy kind of scene, it feels a bit like it's a worldwide common place now.
Yeah, it's not really localized.
There's definitely a sound in certain parts of the world. You'll definitely, seems like there's a bit more quirky, weird shit from Australia kind of area, and someone like Spoonbill's influenced that whole part of it
quirky,
amazingly well. He's done such a good job there. And then it goes all the way through to the old sort of super polished English sound, and then you can pick up on that. But that now has been made everywhere in the world, and there's people making quirky shit in Europe. And I think I don't like to put things too much into, like, maybe this next EP will maybe show some of that, but I don't like to put things too much into scened boxes. And I think people need to do that as well, because it gives you a way to classify things and figure things out. But for me, I'm just like, if I hear something and I like it, I'll let them know, and I'll definitely be into it, and I don't give a fuck where they're from. But I really appreciate that people, put things into sort of areas or sounds come from different places, because I totally agree. You'll get a much more certain style hip hop flavor coming from the West Coast, and I've noticed that in America, even the east to the West Coast was different,
Totally.
And Canada's different. Canada likes more funk, Canada loves their funk, and I love that about it. But to answer that guy's question, I don't know yet because I haven't been there.
Okay.
As well, so.
Well, maybe the second part of his question then, who are you really into right now as artists, regardless of the genre? Some people you're digging their sound.
So funny. I mean, I just went on the road for 30 days and I hardly listened to any music that whole time. It was really crazy. I was working on my music and playing shows, and in between that I'd watch a movie or something like that. I worked on my live set every day. I wrote a bit of music for tracks that already existed, and I found it a little bit hard to start something from scratch.
Yeah.
But I could definitely work on something that I'd already started, or something that was existing, and rewrite some parts. Or so yeah, I mean, I actually listen when I'm not making music. I don't listen to anything like what I make.
Yeah.
I listen to, like, early bonobo-y kind of beatsy, kind of really organic sounding stuff. But obviously, if I was going to pick anyone that in the last year that blew me away, was someone like Cohen Sound. I didn't know about them a year ago. I didn't even know about them.
Yep.
I don't even know how long they've been around. I mean, that's how kind of out of touch I can be sometimes, because I purposely don't dive too far in, because then it's almost like your world becomes that thing. Like, you could listen to, like, you're like, wow, I love this sort of music and I want to make it, and get your head around it and feel what it is, but then stop listening to it and use what you kind of felt in that time to go and make it. Because I think if you get too involved in it, too saturated in what it is, you become such a part of it that you kind of fall into the line of what it is. I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense, but I like to have things that fly from the side and be like, fuck, that sounds completely different. Yep. Cohen Sound just did that on their latest EP. It was like, certain parts of it were very them and very what's around, but then some of it was completely, so polished.
Like that track, Introvert, totally different.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, very really beautiful piece of music, right? Absolutely. Like more down the road of a song.
Oh, they're good. They're good at what they do. Absolutely. But that Funk Blaster EP was the one that caught me, because I hadn't heard of them, and that just come out, and someone sent it to me, and it was like, holy shit.
Just fat.
Holy
really
shit. Someone doing it
so fat,
neuro-funky kind of thing. The drum bass, that's the UK thing that Disney has in there. But yeah, it was like, wow, that's fucking amazing.
Killer. Well, that's actually the second question here from Scott Stewart. He was wondering, how did the Remix project come together? Because you just recently worked with Cohen Sound.
I met one of them, Jim, at a New Year's festival in New Zealand, last New Year's. We were playing on the same stage that same night, and it was pissing down with rain, so I didn't catch their set because it was a little bit earlier on than mine. And I got in the van to get a ride back to the airport because I was flying somewhere at 4 in the morning or some shit. And he was in the van getting a ride to the hotel, and we were just talking away, and it took us a while to even figure out that we both wrote the music that we like of each other's, you know, it was quite funny. So then I just kind of kept in touch and sent them some music, and they did the same, and I think they asked me to do it. I can't even remember how it happened or whether I asked them or, yeah.
Oh, from a rainy festival in New Zealand.
Yeah, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, that we can get a collaboration going. If we both have the time, you know, we're really going to try and figure something out, because
where you're co-producing something rather than remixing
That's it. I mean, you know, I don't know when it will happen, but it's one of those things that we both really want to do, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'd like to hear it.
Yeah,
so
yeah, totally. I'd like to. I'd like to find the time to do it. Absolutely.
Cool. Another question for you from Patrick McGinley. On the business and marketing side of things, he's wondering, what are 1 or 2 steps that you've taken marketing-wise that have really had a strong impact on your career?
Being myself.
Being authentic.
Being authentic.
Yeah.
I mean, you go through stages when you want to push what you do onto the world because you believe in it and you like it, and that's all you need. But if you follow the path of something you see out there that might have worked for a really big act and try and follow up with a similar lingo or a similar look, you know, sometimes when people have a photo of them, the DJ profile photo, and they're looking super tough on some you know thing, and it just kind of, and then you meet them and they're really nice and a cool person. I mean, if you come out and be yourself and have a bit of your real personality in your music and also the way you make it look and feel, I mean, that takes you further, I think, than anything. But in terms of, that's for me probably what's worked, because I mean, when I first put my music out, I didn't really have any idea of how to do it at all. I just did a free EP and it worked, people started following it. And then when I did my album, I mean, I got a really good friend to do the artwork and was stoked. It was fun and playful. And for me, I hadn't really been around really fun and playful music in that tempo and kind of, you know what I mean? It was much more bass heavy, darker kind of stuff. And I don't know, it just felt like the music almost speaks for itself because your personality's in there, and that's the best marketing tool ever. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know, man. I don't know how I do what I do or how I've got to where I've got a lot of the time. It's just...
Well, I think one of the things that I remember from chatting with you probably last time was just you let your music speak for itself,
right?
You know, and you really focus on producing super high quality tunes. The DJs then pick them up and they spread them, and you actually need to do very little. You just, you know, you are doing a lot, but you're spending your time on polishing these amazing pieces of music.
Yeah,
I mean, naturally spread.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm even in the process right now, mentally sometimes, I just thought about right then for some reason, is releasing songs and following them up with a DJ version at the same time or right after, because sometimes I want to take 2 minutes to evolve something and then it drops. Right. But that whole part before then, there's no way they could DJ it. You know,
it's not
it's
DJ friendly.
Thing, this piece of music, you know, and the start of this next EP has a moment where it's, I don't know, it's maybe 20 seconds of just beautiful guitar before it actually has some sort of thing where it comes in with a beat, and then it drops super heavy and but clean and round and almost progressive bass rolling kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But then, you know, some versions of things I would want to do a DJ version, because for me, I know that that's how my music got out there first. It was the DJs playing it and the kids going, "What's this?" You know, and finding out, and that actually is probably that question answered. That was the biggest marketing tool for me. Yeah. DJs were playing my music and kids were asking what it was, or fans were asking what it was of the DJ.
Yeah.
You know, and if the DJ's like, "It's this," and they're like, "Sick," you know, and now they know and they go and listen to it and find it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch up gears and talk a little bit about your studio and its current evolution. What's your studio like right now? Is it in your home? Is it a separate space?
A separate space.
Yeah.
Probably about this big.
Okay.
You guys have no idea how big that is. You can only see one wall. 15 meters that way, or how many? 45 feet? No,
yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. No way that big. You guys use feet?
We use feet
Dude,
still.
there's two of my names here, completely different.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That's funny. That must be my old way of writing it. That was my next way. Let's do it again. What were we talking about? Studio, yeah. So I went back home after my last tour and built part of the studio so it was completely self-contained. This room and a bunch of other studios about 7 tram stops from my house. So
okay.
15 minutes.
So close by.
10 minutes, 5 minutes.
How do you find the difference in having the studio in a separate space from where you live?
I mean, when I'm in the studio and working hard, I might as well just live there. I mean, I'm there from 2 in the afternoon till 4 in the morning, or 9 in the morning till, 10 in the night, whatever the hours that I do. And sometimes I'm like, fuck, I might just put a mattress in the room next door and just sleep,
yep.
And do that. But then I leave and I go home and I chill out and I end up having a much more relaxing morning because I'm not around my studio. I don't get up and listen to what I wrote straight away.
Right.
Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't help when you're like, have an idea and you're just sitting there doing something and you want to just put it down. So I try and take my laptop home, but it's not the full same setup because I have a studio computer, a big iMac, as powerful as I could get at the time. I got it about 6 months ago. I got a bunch of UAD equipment. They were really nice and gave me a license for all their plugins. And I won't use it on every song. And then when I do use it, it's perfect. Like I'll find the right thing and I'll use 3 or 4 things. And I don't like to overcomplicate the way I do something. I've got so many tricks using the most simplest tools to get somewhere. So just before I came away, I got rid of a bunch of plugins on my computer because I don't use them. And I've tried, and maybe in there, people often go, no, it's got amazing sounds. I'm like, yeah, but I just spent like 3 months and I used it once, and actually now it just clogs me up because I'll go in there to use it and I won't get anywhere. And I'll get pissed off and I'll stop writing for the day and I'll go home. So there was 2 plugins, I won't say what they are or anything, but they got to a point where every time I try and use it, it just annoyed me. So I actually just got rid of it.
Yeah, that's good.
So I
cut the losses and move on.
Totally, and I mean, I've still got the license for them and everything. I can use them if I want. And I use a Moog Voyager. Now I've had it for a wee while, but I didn't really use it much. And now I use it a lot for sharp, quick, warm sounds. And I hate that it's not polyphonic, so I can't make pads with it, but I can if I do layered recordings, which I sometimes do. But then I have a Access Virus Polar, which is, for me, I've made the last 10 songs, the last 12 songs, every single one of them I've made the bass with it.
Oh, right on. Fantastic.
And just figured out a shitload of post-production on the sound, but it's got the information in there to get the sound.
It's got the frequencies you want.
Totally.
What do you like specifically about that synth that you like for bass?
It's just, I mean, the way the oscillators work and the way the filters work and the way that your modulation of things can work and the way that, you can kind of almost like, it's got I think it's called a reducer or something, which I'm thinking is a bit crusher kind of thing, but it sounds so clean and zzz, way better than the Logic one or the Ableton one that I've ever heard. It doesn't even sound like that sound. And if you modulate that right and have it all working, I mean, there's something about the sound of the engine that I don't even know what it is. It's just worked for me. And all these really weird kind of sounds that you're like, what actually is that? If you sit back and listen to it and because I try and picture sounds a lot to figure out, to understand them, And that's when I find an artist that I like, I'll listen to their music and think, all right, and I'll break it down and hear the 10 sounds, and figure out what they are. But sometimes it's just so many layers of this one particular sound. You're like, is that one sound? Is that 10 sounds? And that's kind of what I find with this synth.
Right.
The Virus I can make noises with it that people have no idea if that's one sound or 10 sounds, pushing and pulling. And I'm getting into more automation with it because for a long time I was sampling bass and resampling it and bending it and doing that stuff. And it takes you, gives you really cool grooves and rhythms. And now when I'm using this thing, I'm like, automating the shit out of it and then bouncing it and having these crazy 5 versions of one thing, putting them in a line and grabbing different bits from each one, and something about the sound of it that I love.
One thing I've noticed in some of your tunes is it sounds almost like LFOs you're using or something have a swing pattern to the LFO. Have you found a way to do that, or how do you get the swings, the groove, and the wobbles that you're using?
Yeah, that's what I use the virus.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I would have done that. Pretty sure I was using like the contour of a sound and moving that around. So you have like the first 3 oscillations will be really round, and then it'll start kind of sounding like it's hitting a point and dropping off. You know, the contour of an actual oscillation.
Yep.
I think that's where it was. And then I can't remember what it was called. This is the thing, that synth I know so well, but I look at it and I know what it does. And half the time I can't even remember what it says below it, you know. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go through and turn that and that's what I'm gonna get. And I kind of will move things and give it a pattern of a 1/6 as opposed to a 1/4, but move it early. So you're getting the last 4 of them, but they're all slightly, by the time they get to the end, they're getting out of time, but they're not. Just by the end of it, you're like swung into the first beat again.
Gotcha.
And I mean, it's just trial and error the whole time.
And you do that once it's audio, so you'll render it down. You can cut and paste it.
As MIDI.
Yeah. As MIDI. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I actually only really bounce because I've found with that synth I can EQ it to a certain point, and then I can bounce it and just low pass the low end of it because I've got it so clean, and EQ just a sub from that, and not use a sine wave or anything like that, because it's already got this information in there that it's kind of grindy, and the top of the sub you can hear it moving, you know, rather than it being clean.
Yeah.
And exactly. Then it doesn't sound like it's 2 things stuck together or 4 things stuck together. Right. It feels like there's your sub, and then sometimes I'll have I'll EQ just the mid part of it and take out the highs and the bass and work it. And then I have the top and I'll sizzle it and add more reverb to that little bit, or, you know, kind of really make it textural and feel, because it's come from the same sound source. They all fit together perfectly, but then you can make different parts pop out. And I seem to do that more and more. I don't seem to write the majority of a sound using, you know, a certain subtone and a certain midtone, a certain high tone. I'll use the same one thing, create something and give it some sub and make something that has it, and then break it down. And I find that works because then that really glues things together, you know? Well,
especially when you're doing as much modulation as you are, then you can't really put just a regular sine wave underneath, because you don't keep all those patterns, right?
To be honest, I don't think I've even written a song with a sine wave once.
Gotcha.
A whole bass line, you know what I mean? I don't think I've done that.
Well, it just goes to show all the different approaches.
Totally, man. And I'm like, I mean, I've sat down with people and just friends and showed them how I do things, and it's, you know, certain couple of people, it just hasn't clicked with their brain. They're like, you've told me 5 times how to do it, I just still don't get it. You know, I mean, see how you do it. It makes sense, but it just doesn't work for me. And they'll go and do their own way, and that's awesome. I mean, they can end up with the same sound. I mean, I really do have odd ways of going about things sometimes. And I think that works because I'm not limited to be like, oh no, I should go and do this now. I don't think anyone should be told how to do anything. I mean, do what you want.
So in this new studio that you've built, how is it set up?
Sorry,
do you have proper?
Halfway through that.
Yeah, all good.
It's got my friend Jim Spoonbill and another friend of ours, Tom, whose studio room it was. They built these amazing. I'll send you some photos of it.
Sweet.
So you hit me up, and I'll send you some photos of the studio and the baffles that they built, which is just basically rock wool, or this kind of really dense sound absorption inside these boxes with curved edges or angled edges. And I've got like maybe 9 of those in the room, so a couple in each corner of a certain room, corners that need it, and a floating cloud that sits down from the roof maybe 2 feet. And any really bouncing walls that would have anything that's going to just go crazy across to each other, I make sure that
it's all damped out.
Yeah, and sometimes it's super. There's no
really
bouncing waves
room
at all in there, and sometimes it's a bit of a head fuck because you're like,
it's like a sensory deprivation
nothing,
tank.
you know, you go into a club and there's always reverb. You know, outdoors, that's sometimes where I think music sounds incredible if it's this music made for outdoors, because there's nothing for it to bounce off. You know, you might hear it off a mountain if you're far away, but it just goes and it has all this room to do its thing. You know, and so you can stand, you know, hundreds of meters away from a stage, and then you just hit this pocket where you're like, holy shit. You look out, it's just this like waffle of sound around the whole area, and the temperature of the area you are, somewhere in sunrise, you know, because it might be really cold, really warm, or whatever it is, can change the quality of the sound as well, you know, and I love that about it. It's
Excellent.
really cool. But yeah, my studio, so I have the SE Eggs speakers, you know, the SE Electronics
I don't think I've seen those before.
Yeah, I mean, I got
SE8s?
Eggs.
Okay.
It's my accent. EGGS. Eggs.
Okay.
How would you say that?
Eggs, yeah.
Eggs. All
yeah,
right, cool.
right. Like out of a chicken.
Eggs. So that's, yeah, like out of a chicken. Eggs. That's my Kiwi accent coming through.
Okay.
Eggs.
Eggs,
it's
yeah.
exactly, I've got those, which I got just before I went away to come over here.
As
I
new
still
studio
haven't-
monitors.
Yeah, I still haven't worked them out. And I've got my trusty KRK Rocket 6s that I've had for years and years, and I know them so well, and I can push them, and they make sense, and they're almost like, it's almost like that whole thing of the, you know, the old Yamaha NS10s.
NS10s,
you know, that they just sound so shit that they're awesome in a way.
Yeah.
But these don't sound shit. I really like the sound of the KRKs.
How big are these ones?
6s.
They're 6s too?
Yeah, I had the 8s for a second, and I found them too, I didn't like them. I found them too waffly for what I wanted, and overpronounced tones in there. Whereas I find the 6s, they kind of don't go low enough to have overpronounced bass or anything like that. So I can put it through a system with a sub and figure it out later. And a lot of the time I've written songs without a sub and just trusted that if I EQ'd it right and I, you know, feels right, I could close my eyes, lean against the wall and feel the vibration of the wall instead.
Yeah. Yeah, because like 6s usually don't go down into the sub range. They're at least they're
do
not flat.
if your room is,
if the room's dialed, right?
Well, if you have a certain spot in your room, there's always a spot in your room somewhere
where the bass is
where the bass
amplified
comes.
a bit more.
Yeah, and so who knows whether that's correct or not, the bass that you're getting from it, whether the room's making it more pronounced, but yeah, it should fit in there somewhere. And once you, the thing is, what I originally did from way back in the day is my tune Monkey Crunk was one of the first ones that I made, and heard my own music on a sound system just pop, you know, and be like, fuck, that sounds better than the song I played before. And I went out the front at soundcheck one time when I was just starting to play all my own music, and I would then base my mixes for a while off that song, find a new song that sounded even better, base it off that, off my own stuff, and you know, now I reference it off different things, especially if it's getting more musical or more organic, all that sort of stuff. Then I have to sometimes pull myself away from what I know and hear something else and see where they've set the guitar and see if that works for my brain. And
gotcha.
yeah, it's only satisfying myself though. I'm not really trying to satisfy the audio engineer in some country that is the guy that everyone trusts. You know, I mean, if it sounds good to me and makes me feel good, then I mean, I'm going by that, and it seems to work so far. Yeah, I mean, people are like, that sounds amazing, and they love it. So, yeah.
Well, I think you have good ears, man. Like all of your mixes.
One ear.
Are you?
Yeah.
From your days as a drummer?
No,
or
I had major operations all my life.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a crazy thing.
Wow. Well, that just goes to show, even with hearing damage, you're nailing mixes, man. Your mixes sound pristine. A lot of people I know reference against your music because it's so clean sounding. So, yeah, you've got something figured out, man. That's great.
Yeah, I think one ear here is maybe better than normal or something, because nearly my whole life I've had less hearing in my left ear. And recently, it was a year and a half ago, I had my last major operation where I had a cyst removed from behind my eardrum, and they basically cut a hole in my skull, or it was already there from another one, pulled my ear off, basically pulled it up, got in there, got rid of it. It's the most intense shit in my life.
Wow.
Not knowing if I was going to hear at all. And I can hear a little bit, like if I click my fingers, I can hear that there's sound there, but I can't hear the of the your fingers, and I can't hear that high, I lose a lot of high frequencies on that side. But if I close my eyes and sit in the back of a room, I can tell whether it doesn't feel right, you know, whether there's some frequency that I'm not down on, without actually maybe being able to hear it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because you're sensing that vibration with other parts of your body in addition to your ears, or?
I have no idea. I think, I don't really know how I hear things at that point. It's more just a feeling. I mean, I'll do a breakdown, and if I'm just like blissed out and then it drops and I'm stoked and I don't open my eyes and I almost sometimes I'd fall asleep listening to my music, banging as hell songs, but because I felt so good about it, I'd just be completely relaxed, you know, and that was a good sign to be like, right, it makes sense and it makes you feel good or feel something, and yeah, it's a good flow.
Solid.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the current software you're using. You mentioned a couple plugins that you'd gotten rid of out of your library. What are some things that you've recently added, or some go-to ones for you right now?
Well, I mean, the hardware stuff for me is very easy to jump into to get a sound and fuck around and get something going. But Diva, have you heard of Diva?
No, I haven't.
I think Yuhi make it. Do you know Yuhi? U-H-E. I think that's who make it. I can't even remember now.
So many plugins.
There's so many plugins. Diva's almost like an analog modeling thing, so it's got lots of cool.
Is it a synth? Or
Yes,
is it
it's soft synth. Okay. Yeah, it's a synth. And it was cheap. It was like 120 bucks or 160 bucks or something for the license. And I used it once in one session with a friend. He was playing around some keys. We weren't even recording anything, and he had it, or a demo of it. And I was like, man, that's amazing. That's awesome. It's like 3 sounds that I used were just, I think it was before I had the Voyager, were just super cool. And yeah, you can have multiple oscillators, but it sounds like it's coming from a good analog thing. It doesn't necessarily have the overtones and awesomeness of an analog sound, but the idea is there, and I like it because it's just simple.
Yep.
It's not too complex.
I know last time you were here, you were using Tone 2 Gladiator a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used that in the last little bit, maybe because I have the virus dialed in a bit more, and that's kind of a similar thing. It's quite arpeggiated, trancey sort of vibe, you know what I mean? Yeah, maybe I don't use it so much anymore. But I still love it. I actually use it in my live set. I've got 2 sounds that I dial up from songs, and I use it in my live set. So I play the synth line.
Wicked.
And it's not too power hungry, and you can really get a sound pretty quickly.
What about for processing, effects plugins and things like that?
I use a shitload of Logic ones.
Yep, the built-in stock Logic ones.
Yeah.
Do you use the stereo spread plugin from Logic?
Which one? The spreader?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one I've recently started doing mix downs in Logic, and man, that plugin is amazing.
It is like, it's seriously, you have like a pad, and it's like slightly too gnarly, and it's slightly, clashing with maybe your hi-hats or something. Throw that on there, give it a bit more, the LFO intensity, give it a bit more, movement. I don't exactly know how it works or anything, and it just pops in there. It drops the perceived level of the synth or whatever you've got going on slightly, and so everything starts pocketing in. And the ring shifter in Logic's really good for that too.
Fantastic.
And you can start moving around. I sometimes use it, and we'll put a gate on it or whatever, and I'll be able to make like cool, fast, oscillating sounding glitch noises for build-ups. And people think it's me making the synth line and oscillating the synth sound, but it's make a cool sound and then don't worry about fucking around the oscillation, and you can use that to get somewhere over there.
The ring modulator.
Yeah, and it sounds really cool and wide, and it's kind of got a deep sound to it or something,
Do you use that a lot for your transition effects, like little crescendos coming into a new phrase, or?
There's always some, not always, but mostly there's always. 90% of the time, there's always something. No, it's like I often use some sort of phasing. I love chorus as well. The Logic chorus is really cool. Really dig that. There's I can't remember what it's called. UAD have this. Sorry, this what the fuck's it called? It's got
MXR flanger?
Weird. No, it's not. It's not your standard thing. It's this weird name. It's just a box with 5 buttons, and it basically does that similar thing. Pops like a pad. Just gives it like this creaminess. You can hardly even hear it, but in a mix, it just like glues things together. And I'm getting more and more anal as I go along of how I want things to sit and glue.
Yeah.
If my gut tells me something like, oh, it's not quite right, but it'll be okay. If my gut's told me that once, if I leave it, it's gonna piss me off the rest of my life, because every time I hear it, I'll be like, fuck that one little thing. And you can go forever trying to fix things. But there is a point when you've got to stand back from it, and leave the energy in there that was originally there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of processing, I use a lot of the Logic things. I use a lot of the Logic reverbing, compressing. Sometimes dial up some UAD stuff, like even like solid state Logic channel strips, SSL channel strips.
Yep.
And push them to give it gain and almost compression, because you can get this weird effects going on with that sort of shit. And
yep, for sure.
the EQ of those is sometimes immensely amazing, and they're expensive plugins, but they really, if you use them in the right moment, they're just like, you can't really get anything else like it,
Yeah.
But sometimes they take a while to dial in. You know, you'll pull up something that you're totally used to, and you'll try and use it on a sound, and it's like, fuck, it's not quite working. I don't know why. You know, it'll take you a while to really figure out why that is. So sometimes they can take, for me, I'll get too annoyed and go straight back to a Logic plugin and dial it in quicker. Maybe at the end of the day it might not have sounded as good, but it's fine for that moment. You know, I don't notice the difference.
Yeah. I'd love to talk a little bit about your process of writing a tune, and particularly where you're spending your time. So there'll be like, you know, do you find you spend a lot of time up front on sound design and you have like a burst where you do arrangement and then you leave it for a bit and work on mixing, or what does your process look like, and then where are you spending the majority of your time, or how does your time breakdown look?
I normally get something down at the start that just gets me going, whether it's just the groove somehow normally, and using drums and maybe a couple of synths. And I'll find something in there that really excites me, whether it's a noise, and I'll try and evolve it. I mix as I go. Like within the first couple of hours, I've got the sound, whether it is only a few drums and one synth sound, it is still as fat as I want it to be. Basically, you know, I haven't done the last final touches, but I'm really against making myself mix for a couple of days on a song when the energies of my enthusiasm for it's gone, you know. So I'm all about, when I find a sound, making it the best I can right then, you know, but not spending too long on it because you get so trapped in what it is, but just long enough to be like, that fits, you know, and maybe I'll spend, like this EP, I probably spent a week at the end, even just listening to it, figuring out if that shit is actually fitting and the transitions were good and all that, and at that point I'm still probably mixing it, you know, without realizing, and mastering all at the same time. Are you still mastering your own tunes? Mm-hmm. Every single one? Every single one. Awesome. Do you export a stereo file before you do that, or you do master just on your master bus? Mostly a master bus. Yeah, so you have it all, you can make adjustments to everything along the way. Exactly. You ever find that you go back and you have this ability to always tweak something? Do you ever get lost in that, or are you pretty good with disciplining yourself to say? I mean that's just the same, like that's why I mix as I go and master almost as I go, because then when I feel like I've finished the song, I'm actually finished. I'm not then taking it to a mastering engineer, he sends it back, and then I realize that hi-hat sounds too loud and I actually don't like the hi-hat sound or some shit, you know? Yeah. So that gives me the ability to feel like when the song is done, it's actually done. Yeah. I'm not having to spend the next day wondering whether it's going to come back right. And often, when it comes back after someone masters it, whether it's sonically more, what's the word, like it's okay in society's eyes or some shit, you know, it's like fits in all the boxes and doesn't go there. But yeah, you're right, I haven't really had the trouble of people coming back to me and saying, my stuff sounds too like this, or it's all just your own opinion. I mean, that's the weird thing, you know, this sort of level of amazing production and ability to bend speakers and, you know, everything like that's only been around for a wee while. I mean, you listen to electronic music of 30 years ago and the ideas are insane, but the production's not. The production quality isn't there. Because they couldn't do it, you know, and it's amazing for the time, and maybe now we're just amazing for our time, but there's no rule of like, this is how electronic music should sound. I mean, someone's going to come along at some point and do something, fuck knows what it is and what it could be, that's going to change the whole thing again. I mean, yeah, you never know. So, I mean, yeah, I like doing the mastering as I go because it doesn't stop me from losing the energy for the song at the end, you know. One thing I've noticed is that I'll do quick masters of my own tunes sometimes just for the dance floor. One of the things I notice, I might feel like I have a mix nailed, right? And then I throw it into a limiter, and all of a sudden it's like completely different. Exactly. I mean, do you ever mix into a limiter just to, no? You always throw that on as the last stage? No, I mean, this is the thing, I don't often, I have something sitting there, but I'm not going to go through my whole mastering process because it's actually varies quite a lot. Yep. Sometimes I don't use any of the plugins that I normally would, and sometimes I use all of them that I've got sitting there. It's almost like by the time it gets to the point of mastering, it's already sitting where it's going to, and I might just need to give it some more sub at 50 hertz, or take some out at 60 hertz, or, you know, the 160 is starting to clash, the low mids and the sub, so I've got to pull that out and just really subtly do that stuff, and like you say, go in and grab that hi-hat and EQ the hi-hat while I'm still mastering on the channel, and just feel where it goes, as opposed to doing that thing of having, like I have a pet hate when I'm writing music with someone and they have everything turned way down and then later on they're going to boost the channels or the master or something, and I'm like, you know, we've got it turned up, we're rocking out, and in the back of my head I'm going, well, but it's not actually going to sound like this once we try and do to get it to where it's meant to be. And that's just my way of doing it. I mean, it's probably the wrong way or some shit, but
well,
I mean,
there is no wrong way if you're getting good results. If it sounds good, it doesn't matter what your process is.
But I mean, when I write with people and I start the writing process, they're like, dude, you need to turn that down, you know, it's about to peak out. And I'll just purposely turn it up and be like, I can't hear distortion, and it's peaking in the red and everything like that, but there's no distortion. And it sounds fat and cool. I'm like, fuck, all right, so I'll bounce it.
Yeah. And
bring it back in. And there's no distortion there. It's still got, you know, it's still not actually hitting zero. It's at -0.1 or wherever I've got, if there's a limiter there or whatever, and it's clean. But it's like, it's like using the analog clipping, or, you know, the distortion of that isn't actually distorting, you know, you're just boosting the shit out of it. And all these other tones come in and things. Digital's a bit harder to do, and it depends what program you use. Like I've tried doing it in Ableton and I couldn't do it as well as I could in Logic. And that's something that in the engine of Logic has good numbers for it. Who knows if Cubase can do it? Probably has something else that does something similar. I'm sure there's probably a way in Ableton to do it, but it's just not the way I'm used to doing it.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I would do sometimes, and it's kind of really unethical, but that's what I'm thinking. Unethical is the word.
Or it's maybe not the way that, you know, a professor would have taught you how to do it in audio engineering school, but again, you know.
But I mean, I would love, I haven't got in touch with them, but all the people, I went and studied, what was it called, music industry technical production for 1 year in Melbourne when I first moved there, or a couple of years after I moved there. And it was awesome because the people I was working for had been in the industry, studying from, had been in the industry for years, and I had so much respect for them just for their jobs. It wasn't like they were electronic music producers and I had this dream of being that. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just, you know, liked music, could write some music, was figuring out how to do it, getting better at it. But they were like, this is how a compressor works, taking it apart and showing you the channel and the chain and everything that makes it do what it does. So maybe at some point along the way I was like, but I only like that little bit of it, you know, I don't want this other extra thing going on, so maybe I should just try and use that instead and fuck the rest of it, you know. I mean, that's a bad example of using a compressor, but some technology you can really use to your advantage. I use sometimes the bit crusher in Logic as a hard limiter for really short, sharp sounds. Because there's zero rounding of any edges, you know, it's not like you've got this thing that pushes in and pulls again, you know, you haven't got anything moving. It's clean, it's 24-bit, no downsampling. And it's not really a limiter, it's more just a little bit of drive on it. You know, just push it a little bit. And it's not distorting, it just gives it a bit more guts without having to try and push and pull it, you know what I mean? Yeah, so I mean, it's probably the wrong way to do it again, but fuck it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sweet, man. Love to talk with you a little bit about beats. Your beats are always super fat, and everybody could use some tips on how to write super fat beats, man. So what are you doing that's working so well for you?
How do you write super fat beats with?
Do you sample a cat in the microwave exploding and then layer it up with like a pitched up tom, or like what's your process?
I don't know, man.
Or is it different every time? Maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, it is kind of. I've got certain ways of doing certain things. I love beats that no matter what they are, they sit. I'm a drummer, so I like drums being a very big focus of a song, if it's a dance floor song.
Totally. So let's assume it's a dance floor song.
Cool. I mean, I have a pet hate for washy snares that don't have any crack at the start of them.
Okay.
So there's always a thing for me where I want you know what it is? It's what you have going on around it, and this isn't necessarily the drum that you're trying to find. You could get a really shitty kick drum and a really shitty snare drum, but you could place them perfectly and every sound around them complements them and it will sound fat as fuck. I mean, it might not sonically feel fat as fuck, but it will fit in there, and it will, if you play it on a shitty speaker over there, it might be like, you're like, holy shit. Until you put it on a PA, you might realize that the sounds are shit, but they fit perfectly together. So it's often, I'll even be very careful about the sound I have right before a snare drum, because if I've got a big, you know, and a tone that's got shitloads of mid in it, right before I want a really punchy snare drum. Well, the speakers are already going to be pushing out or doing whatever they do, and then it comes in and it doesn't crack. You know, you got to have that like gap or space or lightness. You know, that makes people kind of, you know, you watch people on a dance floor when you have a pad that's kind of, you know, lifts up and sort of does its thing. People almost feel like they're taller, and then you bring it back down. The bass comes in, and they like drop their dance moves, and they're back down there again. So it's almost like that with the speaker. You know, you've got to really feel how you're going to place things, so you don't have things on the off that are really throw people right before you want your big sound. But in terms of like sonically how I do it, I mean, there's one part of my kick drum that I made a couple of years ago, and I'll use it in not all my tracks, in a lot of them. And I'll pitch it slightly, and it's just a really good, sharp tone that, I don't even know how I made it. I can't really remember. But I spent like a week just making some snares and some kicks when I was recovering from one of my operations, because I had no ability to, and I was scared to write music. I was like, fuck, if I can't, you know, I was still recovering, and if I can't do it, I don't want to be super depressed guy and not know what to do with my life. So I just started doing that, fucking around, and like Bilbo Baggins was the first song I wrote after I had my last major ear operation, and it was like very different for me and all over the place, you know, doing its thing. And I know for a fact that I got a bunch of fans from different genres because of that song, you know, and it was like an interesting moment for me. And in that song, the drums, I can't even remember what the snare drum sounds like, whereas something like Monkey Crunk, of course I do, because it makes the song.
Totally.
So that's a bunch of white noise. I think it's got a really high pitched up kick for the first very split second, and I've just faded it of the snare, so I've faded it really fast. So you don't actually have the kind of thing, you've got like its crack, because kicks are really good at having a really sharp attack, but they haven't actually developed the subtone of it yet. So they've got this, like the sound
just
of it
like the beater against the membrane kind of deal.
That whole thing. And then it goes, you know, it has that kind of thing that I like, and the white noise of the whatever. Very quickly EQ'd and faded, and so at the time I didn't know if they were loud enough or EQ'd right, because I couldn't really care properly, but I was just liking the idea of having the time to do that, you know. Otherwise I'm normally too hyperactive to sit there and write drums all day.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it changes a lot, and if any advice I could give, it's all about placement and having sounds that relate to each other, and not being afraid to have a sound that's slightly different, because, you know, changing your snare up. And I quite often use sample bank snares, 5 of them, and just slot them together, and suddenly you've got your own snare.
Will you be EQing and notching out pieces and boosting other pieces of different layers to get them to fit together? Mm-hmm. And we use a compressor to kind of glue the bus together?
Depends on how loud it is and how much I'm pushing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be heavily due to the actual, you could turn down a snare 3 dB and it will feel louder in a song. You know what I mean? Like, it really, it's almost that whole ethical thing of like, is this the correct way? Where should my level be sitting on my snare drum? And I think you should turn the fucking screen off and just have a listen.
Yeah.
And it might
Solid
be like,
advice.
wow, man, this fucking snare's too loud, or it's too quiet. But it's already looking like it should be in the right place, but it's not. It's like, well, forget about that. Just put it where you think it should be.
Based on feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are you running your beats through limiters as well? Like, will you run your snare through a limiter, your kick through a separate limiter?
The kick, no, because I've built some kick drums that fit bang on 0.
Yeah.
And on that channel, it's like, there it is. I mean, I know exactly where it's going to sit.
So you have no need to make that, you know,
I've
louder.
made the sound perfect, just resampled it.
Nice.
It's like ready to go. And I've probably got 20 of them.
Okay.
And they're super varied. And in some way, I'll only use 5 of them for a year. But I'll take the top of them off, EQ the shit out of it. I'll just leave the sub part of it and put a new top on it, or I'll take the sub out and put a new sub on it, or whatever. Yeah, totally. But and it changes the sound completely. But I know that certain area that I'm wanting from it is there, you know.
Gotcha. Sweet. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
One of the things you were alluding to a little bit earlier was the role of space. And that's one thing that I've always noticed in your music that is one of your strong points as a producer, is the role that intentional space plays in your tunes. You can even tell it, you know, when you're listening to your tunes, you'll leave a gap before another major sound comes in, and so when it comes in, it just slams.
Well, the speakers are ready for it. I mean, and the people are too.
Yeah. So maybe you could tell me a bit about how do you do that? Like, if you're, for example, like a lot of times returns on a reverb could be like muddying something up, so you don't actually get the silence that's there. So how do you ensure that the right type of silence is there in your tune?
So what do you mean by the reverb?
So let's say you had like a pad, and the pad had a little bit of reverb on it, but then you had your snare drum coming in right after that. Would you somehow automate down the reverb or something like that, or render it out to audio and mute the reverb or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Does that take a lot of time? Like, is that something you spend quite a bit of time on, like muting the different types of sounds?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, if you suddenly feel like it's not working, then just do it.
Yeah.
Fuck, it doesn't matter how long it takes. Just do it right then, and it may make the whole song.
Yeah.
It may just be like, that's it. I mean, that little bit of gap right there just made the whole thing make sense, you know. And the rest of the song, because of that one gap, is like building to that point or some shit. And then when that sound actually comes in, I mean, I'll have a rhythm going in my head, you know, and humming it away or whatever. And half of those notes are actually gaps. And I know maybe that they're going to be that. And I'm kind of got a beat going, and I'm sort of figuring out what I want to do with it. And I will mute a channel, 5 channels, and leave the core thing going, and I'll add 1 or 2 of them back in. And I'm like, yeah, they work. I'll take them out, and I'll add the other 3 back in. And then it's like, whoa, fuck. Although the 2, they're annoying, gone. But you know, it might at the time feel like it needed that extra sound because you just heard it a million times or whatever. But
you're just getting used to hearing it.
I'll write a song. This very, very often happens. I'll write a song, and the last thing I do a song before I start the sort of really last decision phase is get rid of a bunch of shit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How do you pick what you're going to get rid of?
I just trial and error, and I close my eyes. I don't go through and go, yes, no, yes. If I'm like, yes, and it's a definite yes, and I'm like, that's a fucking shitload better. Save as a new session, delete the whole fucking thing, get rid of it. Who cares if I've made the best sound, whatever. It's still somewhere else, I can get back to it. But that whole process of being stuck with something that isn't quite working, I mean, it was really cool. Just before we started tour, I went and sat with Aaron. He was finishing some songs, and he was like, man, I just can't quite finish the song. I think it needs this little synth line. I was like, okay, play it. And he dropped the song, and there was this one synth that came in right at the start. I was like, what's that thing there? You know, and he kind of found what it was, soldered it, and was like, just mute that again and start from the start. And he did it, and it was like,
the whole tune worked.
The whole tune worked. It was crazy, and it was really, it's definitely how I do it a lot of the time. I'll get rid of shit before I'll add shit sometimes.
You're the first person I've ever heard say that, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because what is that quote like? Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, or music is the space between the notes, things like that, right?
Well, and you don't have to think about it too much, but you just, when you get to a point where you're really confused with what's going on, you've tried sounds and you've done all that sort of stuff, just imagine you've heard the song for the first time on the dance floor. You know, are you going to react to that little noise you put in there? Are you going to even know it's there, you know?
Yeah.
Is it going to make all the difference? And maybe that noise not being there, that little whatever happens between those other 2 noises is what makes people get it, you know? And I mean, you've really got to, it's almost like a philosophy that you have to build yourself, or understand yourself that's in you. You know, it's going to be in everyone somehow. It's all just taste.
Sweet, brother.
Like fucking ice cream.
We've got a couple other questions, and then we'll wrap up. Just a couple other questions from some of the members.
Yep.
So we've kind of touched on this before, but one of the folks here, Nikita, was wondering, how do you approach a song? Do you get an idea in your head first and you write that, or do you go sit down at the computer and you're like, I'm gonna just see what comes out?
Yeah, I mean, this last EP, the opening track is called Fizzle Tickler, and the first thing that I thought about that made me end up writing this song, it started where, that's right, it was. I was chopping up this, I made this kind of thing on my Moog, and I was like, fuck yeah, I've always wanted to use those notes together, you know, and it's just like this cool little thing, and I tweaked it out, and it's great. I was like, fuck yeah, and I made this funky as fuck beat to it, and I put in some like Marvin Gaye vocals, and I was like making this cool thing, and I was making this bootleg or whatever. A friend of mine came around and he was rocking out to it, and he left, and it became like late at night, and I'd always wanted, for like 2 weeks before then, I wanted to use some sort of super rolling bass. It wasn't chopped up at all, it was just, you know, really, but in a more mid-tempo sense. And it kind of came from my love for really good progressive house or something, which I haven't listened to fucking ever, but I always remember going to my first big outdoor parties and a good progressive house set at sunrise or sunset or whatever during the day. And those moments where it just got on that groove and it rolled, you know. And so that's that thought of like, always wanted to do a song with rig rolling bass. That was my first point to do for the song, and then something else had started, so I just adapted it into that. And it kind of, often that's how I start a song. I'll think about something I've always wanted to do, like slow and sloppy and really late snare is just one idea for something, you know, that I may have had, and I've never had the chance to do it because a lot of my time my snares are super bang on, and that just evolves into something, you know. And it's normally one thing that will I'll make that one thing, and then it just fucking, who knows where it's going to go from there. I might end up deleting that one thing, you know.
Yeah.
But it's always something. It's almost like a production not a technique. It's almost like a what is it? You know, I might want to make a pad that progresses and goes minor and major within 4 bars or something. That, you know, that's the idea, or whatever. I mean, whether that makes sense or not. And that's what I try and do. And then I'm like, oh, what tempo should it be? And then I'll drop some sort of beat in there. And I always focus it around drums pretty quickly. And I'll put drums in there within the first couple of hours at least. And even an hour, you know, and chop up sounds around that. And from when I start a song to when I finish it, normally ends up pretty different, you know.
Sweet.
Yeah.
How long do you find you're spending on a tune, your average tune?
Longer and longer nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people go the opposite, they're like shorter and shorter, but for me, I really want to keep my sound evolving and maintaining the integrity of what I do.
Well, you've kind of set the bar up here.
Right.
You know, so.
Right. Well, I hope it keeps moving. I mean, for me, it's now becoming more about the song than trying to write the #1 DJ hit, you know? And I guess even if I have or haven't done that already, you know, I don't know. I never was thinking about doing that. You know, I never tried to do that. I didn't stop doing something because I didn't think DJs would play it. But now I've kind of hit that, like I was talking about before, I've hit that thing of, even if I do write something that's super like a song, at some point, if it's really good and I want to do it, I'll make a DJ version at some point that I'll put out again. And
I really like that idea.
You know, because I do want people to still be able to DJ it, you know, and just purely for them to be able to have fun with it as well.
Gotcha.
But for me now, my music is about any time, any place, if you're into it, you know. So if you were just sitting there on the train and listening, it was raining outside, you're just looking out, thinking about your life, and it works because you're just like having a moment that you can actually enjoy it, or to rock out on a dance floor. And I play some of my more mellow shit now that I've written that I haven't released yet in the middle of my set or near the end. You know, I'll finish on a really mellow note sometimes, bring it right down so people are paying attention and they're not losing their shit, screwing their faces off. You know, it's like there's some music in there, but that sometimes makes people lose their shit way more because they have the ability to actually. Right. I noticed years ago, Bass Nectar does that really well. I don't know if he still does. Haven't seen him. Oh no, I saw him play. Yeah, no, he does. He brings it right down to a moment, you know, and has like one piano hit, and people are like, fuck, you know. And it's that ability of, you know, if you've ever gone to your favorite band or whatever, often for me that's the moment that I remember when they bring it right down.
Totally.
So that for me is that, you know, I want to keep writing music that can be that moment. But if I play it on a dance floor on a loud system, it sounds sick and people are down on it, you know, and they dance to it. Yeah,
for sure.
I like it.
Another one of the guys, John Citizen, was wondering how you deal with creative blocks. Obviously, everybody invariably stumbles into something that hangs them up at some point. How do you handle that and get past it? Because you've always had really good artistic output and seem to, you know, get yourself back in a groove.
I mean, nothing lasts forever. So as hard as it seems at the time when you're in a creative block and you feel like everything you're doing is shit, and I know what it feels like, everyone has it, you're right. At some point you're just gonna, I mean, just imagine the good feeling it's gonna be when you get back on it. You know what I mean? Like, it will come and it'll be fucking awesome, you know. And for me, I often try my best to, and some of my friends will say I don't, try and leave the studio and like go and do something else, but sometimes I find that too hard. Maybe I just need to party for 2 days, you know? I don't know what it is. Sometimes that helps, sometimes doing the business side of things helps because you get re-inspired when you're emailing about something, you know, that you're excited about. Or, I mean, just do anything you can. Maybe just don't sit in front of a computer trying and trying and trying until you want to kill yourself.
Beating your head against a wall usually isn't the best way to do it.
No, man, if you're really just feeling like shit, just stop. I mean, it's not like, this is the other thing. People feel like sometimes they need to keep putting music out, right? And I believe that you could stop putting music out for an entire year and spend an entire year writing an album. And that one album could surpass absolutely everything you've done, the million songs you've written before. And people remember every single one of those songs forever and always want to hear you play those songs, you know?
Right.
Instead of trying to fulfill the gap that happens in between those times, you know? And it's not necessarily going to get you any further forward. So, I mean, I suffer from it too, of not the output thing, but more the just want to keep writing thing when maybe you are having a block, and it's best to just sit back and make that one awesome tune as opposed to those 5 mediocre tunes, you know? And that's kind of always been my philosophy of, if I'm not super into it, I won't put it out. I've got shitloads of tunes that I never put out.
Yeah.
I don't really play a lot of them anymore because I'm past it or whatever, and I'm doing the next thing, and I'll bring one of them back every now and then. People have never heard them and they're still super into them. But yeah, I mean, just be really selective with it. And sometimes for me, I sit back. Good thing that gets me past creative block is I sit back and I reflect on what I'm doing. Not musically, just like, what am I doing?
Like refocus yourself? Or?
Yeah, I mean, just as a person. You know, I'm sitting here in my house in Melbourne and I'm making music for a living and touring the world, and then I'm like, wow, man, fuck, there's all these people who are really into it, and then suddenly I might have this spurt or something. I mean, think about it differently, because you get so enthralled in making this sonic texture to go play to people, or have people play it, that texture just goes way over your head, and you're like into the nitty gritty and just feeling like you're going nowhere, because you've forgotten about that big picture, you know? That helps.
So I'm going to chill with the questions. Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything that you know, like, given that our audience here are a whole bunch of geeks, budding music producers, fans of your music, is there anything that you would want to say to them?
I mean, for me at the moment, my career is constantly taking a step in a direction. I mean, and it's never felt like it's gone backwards. I mean, and I don't ever want to think too much about, I mean, you always want to be moving forward as a person and as a creative individual and group or whatever. But there's always something little that happens that kind of gets me really excited and re-envisioned. And at the moment, I haven't started it, so I shouldn't really talk about what it is, but I'm doing a remix for basically a movie studio for something that I put out, and I've got to finish it as soon as I get home after this European tour. And something like that got me rethinking into, you know, really wanting to just make music for just times and places, you know. And for me, I love having that beat and that groove and everything going on, so I will always involve that. But just, you know, write something that does last for 3 or 4 minutes, but I'm picturing a sunset, you know, and that's actually what gets me. That's my biggest thing for creative block. That's what it is. I try and picture where I'm going to go with this, or where I want someone to discover it, or whatever, as opposed to, am I going to sell 50 copies?
Right.
5 million copies.
Yeah, taking some of the pressure off it, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it just is just what it is.
Yeah.
And I always think about, what if one day I'm not doing this anymore, and what if I go deaf? What if I don't like putting that negative energy on my head or anything, but I'm just like, oh, well, I'll find something else, you know, and I love making, you know, a lot of the artwork I've done for myself for all my albums and EPs, and I guess that thing for me is like kind of an inspiring thing in itself, of just being like, I'll just do something else, you know, and I'll keep moving forward. Then I'm like, no, I want to do music, so I'll get back into it. Yeah, I mean, my life at the moment is getting more and more hectic, and my last just trip recently to LA was fucking awesome. Had some cool meetings, met some cool people. I think it's going to get really exciting in the next little while, even more so.
Sweet, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, you got a big year coming up for 2013,
yeah.
Lots of new stuff on the horizon. And
it's like what's happening at the moment, and I don't know what's happening really in the whole worldwide electronic music scene, but there's an element to me where I feel like the people who are hitting me up to say that they're into my music are genuinely into my music and what I do. And that makes all the difference, because I don't feel like I'm just having people tell me at shows. Sometimes they do, and whatever, that's fine. But they're not just wasted in there for no reason. They're like genuinely, even if they are wasted, they actually really like it, you know. And that for me is like just sort of happened more and more recently. Really started to make this thing that I do more real, you know, like it's pretty surreal for a while because you're not used to it, and now I'm quite used to it. I'm like, fuck, this is my life. I'm gonna plan out a month when I'm gonna go home, and I'm gonna make the best music I've ever made, you know, and keep that thing going. So I don't know, man, my life's a fucking whirlwind at the moment.
Yeah, well, with tours left, right, and center, and then getting back in the studio, and you also get kind of like the dual season. You do all the festivals in Australia, and then you do all the festivals here, and I
think I'm going to spend more time here next summer.
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I like it over here. It's a lot of fun.
Excellent.
A lot of fun.
Well, a lot of people will already be on your social media networks and email list and things like that, but what are some of the best ways for folks to connect with you and to keep in touch on all your recent events and happenings?
Well, we just put up I just designed a new website. My good friend Shay built it for me in Australia. So that's going to be really good because it's going to have all my music. You can just listen to it on there. It's got its own player.
Is it live now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it's still opiuo.com. And it's got its own player. You can do all that sort of shit from there, and it's got its own SoundCloud embedded and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of a central point. You can see the updates for Facebook through there, or Twitter, or whatever.
Okay. You also have an email list where people can sign up to, right? And you send out free music to that sometimes.
So that's normally. It's been funny because of the transition of the website. We had to transition newsletter styling. So when this Kimber remix came out, did you get that?
Yeah.
Last week.
Totally.
So that didn't go through my mailing list first because we didn't have it set up at the time. And normally that's the best way because it'll have like exactly when shit's going to get released, or if there's a free remix, it'll come out there first. So on my website, you can go download free music. You put your email address into my top spin, and that's the best way to do it.
For sure. Gotcha. Fantastic.
Yeah, right now I can't even remember what's going on in my life, what I should tell you, or what's going on in the future.
Well, it's to be expected.
I think I'm going to write an album next year, like a full album. Who knows whether it'll happen or whether I'll keep doing EPs, or it just has to depend on the time. I mean, I think I want to spend a bit of time touring the band, touring the world, and in between that, making a fucking cool album.
Sweet. Awesome, man.
It'll be fun.
Killer, bro. Well, you're always so giving and always so great with your time. And every time you're in town, you always make time for the interviews. So everybody appreciates it.
I like talking about it, man. I like not for my own ego or anything like that. I like that people are interested in it, and I'd love for them to be able to do it too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best thing. Some people get pissed off. I mean, if someone's copying exactly what you do, fair enough. Because there's an ability to. I'll rephrase that. If someone's taking exactly how you do something and basically just rebranding it as theirs and their creation, good for them if they want to do it, and it can piss people off. But I'm more up for sharing what I do know to how I've got to wherever, so people will keep moving me forward. I mean, like I said before, hearing these amazing releases that are coming out randomly, it's kind of made me step up my game, but in a very different way. Like I haven't necessarily wanted to outdo them with a crazier bass sound. I wanted to make it more organic, or make it build longer and feel different when it drops, and have more emotion in that way, or whatever. So I mean, that's something that I always want to talk to people about, how to do things.
Fantastic.
Because then it keeps moving forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to get stale and boring.
Totally. That's one of the great things that we have with YouTube and the internet, the ability to share knowledge back and forth. And thanks for being one of those people that's open to share.
So good.
Yeah.
Thanks
so much, brother. Cheers.
Yeah, sweet.
All right.